reconvening into open session. And there's nobody on public input tonight, so we will move on to district business 4.1. And we have a lovely bunch here today to talk about a donation. And so first I'll just take a motion to approve a donation in the amount of $6,000 from the estate of Mary Alice Lucy to expand and diversify classroom libraries at the Wisconsin Heights Elementary School.
I'll motion.
I second.
Awesome. And we can have some discussion, but we have the group here to say a few words on Mary's behalf, and love to hear it. So, where's your Ben?
We don't have a speech, but if you are from the area or ever had the chance to know Mary Alice Lucy, her whole life was about education, and especially first and second graders, and teaching them to read, working with disabled children. And unfortunately, she never had any children of herself or other siblings, and so with some of her estate that she passed on, her benefactors kind of got together and decided this would be a nice way to help keep the memory of Mary alive. And separately, there's a brick that we'll be putting out wherever the bricks are, which says, "From the Library of Mary A. Lucy," 14 character. Mary A. Lucy, because that is memorably the sticker that she has on hundreds of children's books that she left behind. And so that's kind of a keep not Mary Alice.
And really, I'll say the discussion started when we were kind of trying to brainstorm the best use for the money. And I'm on the endowment committee, and so in collaborating with Dale, we always have teachers asking for grant money to expand their classroom libraries, and most of the time it's nothing to do with the nuts and bolts of the curriculum. It's just what brings kids joy and what can they find joy in reading. And so this was kind of a perfect opportunity to offer teachers some extra cash to get some fun, exciting books into the classrooms that can hopefully inspire kids to pick them up and read. And so it's really a perfect scenario, and we have some verbiage down there to ensure that the funds will be in place to go directly towards that. So some really exciting things, and thank you so much.
Yeah, we look
That's
forward to it
incredible
lasting
fun
a
money.
long time and really helping life reading.
That's super. So we can take a vote. If there's no more discussion.
I'll just say I have the wonderful opportunity to thank Ben on behalf of my family and on behalf of the school board and of everybody in the community. So thank you for all the work you have done to make this happen, Ben. I really all appreciate it. People behind you and in front of you. So thank you.
Yeah, I feel like we need a round of applause. All right, Cindy.
Yes.
Mary Beth.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Dylan.
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
I vote yes. And we will be taking a picture. Yes, sure, absolutely. Do you want the whole clan in?
Absolutely.
Is this like, are you sure? I just feel like we got Ben's
How about
choice.
if we do one with Ben and then
Okay,
one with
fine.
everybody?
That way, peer pressure.
I'll negotiate.
You know what all the trouble we had before doing that?
And remember, Barb, you're related.
I kind of
Yeah,
have
you're
family
our
too.
family.
Okay. Get in here, come on. This looks awkward, Eileen. Bad angle.
Well, fire away, Jack.
Dylan, did you want to get in it?
Yeah, Dylan,
Well,
get in
Barb's
here.
up there, the whole family, I suppose.
Family too.
Do we want Dale in there too for the?
Sure, Dale, get in here.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dale.
The whole room will be up there. Since he's gonna be the one kind of.
Maybe Bev should be in there too. I'll take the picture.
That's true.
I kind of feel
If you are peripherally
Yeah.
related,
Other side,
we see
other
our own-
side. What?
Welcome.
I meant family-wise, but you can stand on the other side.
You go here, you go here. No, you switch.
Yep, just want to make sure he's. I do, so that's the bad part. All right, thanks.
Awesome, you bet. Thanks again for all the work. I think we've talked more than we ever have.
Certainly have.
thanks again for coming.
Thank
you.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Yes, right. All right. Moving on to minutes and payroll. Do I have it's lagging. Do I have an approval for the Board of Education meeting minutes of May 22nd, 2023?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing done. Cindy? Yes. Mary Beth?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Matt? Dylan?
Yep.
Angie?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. And 5.2, do I have a motion to approve the payroll and accruals disbursements listed?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion, questions? All right, hearing done. Cindy? Yes. Mary Beth? Yes. Mike?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Dylan?
Yes.
Angie? Yes. I vote yes as well. Well, I was just wondering if we should move things around, but I think we can get through. Craig, do you want to get on the road?
I'm gonna sit through the meeting.
The whole,
Yeah.
okay, because otherwise we could move,
Yep.
You
we
wanna
could
start
move
first?
9.1 up a little bit if you want to get on the road.
Well, why don't you do that,
Yeah,
and then
let's do
I
that.
can
Then you
make
don't
the
have to,
decision
yep,
as
okay.
the night goes on.
That's what I was thinking,
All right.
yes.
Yes.
All right, so we are gonna move action item 9.1 up to 6.1, I guess it would be. Ms. Clerk, yes?
9.1 to 6.1, huh?
So do I have a motion to approve the hire of Craig Gerlach as our interim district administrator?
Second.
Oh.
That's the fastest she's ever. Oh. Okay, any discussion that anybody would
I just
like
want
to
to, say thank you for the energy and the experience that you bring. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for our district.
Anything else? Ditto. Yeah, I'll say the last month has been something,
Roller coaster.
a roller coaster of emotions, and I'm really proud of this group, the way we've come together and worked together and the highs and lows of everything, but I will say after tonight, it's been surely refreshing that we're at the place that we are, and I think we all walked out of that room really excited for the year to come and for you to be joining us, and I hope you feel the same.
Yes.
Reciprocal.
Thank you, we'll have a great year.
Yeah, right. So on that note, we shall take our vote. Cindy?
Absolutely.
All right, Mary Beth?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Yes.
Dylan? You get one
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. All right, so now we can move on. I will skip my board report tonight. We have enough.
Excuse me, I'll be back. I'm gonna
You
get
bet.
my driver's license and get that to
Oh,
Bill.
So she can take my background check.
The door might be locked, so.
There you go.
Yeah, take it away.
The front door? Yeah.
We don't know.
We are
okay.
Okay.
Jerome just said he locked it again when he left.
Darn it, Jerome.
Do his job. Picture and he goes.
Those helmets. All right, reports. For those of you who are left. Who wants to jump in?
Oh, I can start.
All right.
May, obviously, it was a very busy month for middle high school, wrapping up a lot of things, so saw you all at graduation. Yes. Yeah, so we had a great end of the year, a lot of leadership from our senior class are graduating, so they will be missed. And already, trying to wrap up things right now from this year with school improvement planning right now, actually, and then looking forward already to next year and what changes need to be made, and trying to get some student input and some little changes. So, yeah, it's been amazing.
I saw someone posted today a Costco flyer that said back to school special. And they were like, really? And so, like in your mind, it doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
just,
stop,
right,
no.
exactly. On to the next. And
Sorry,
Mom.
I just, it's all good.
It's okay.
It's all good.
Right, right.
That's crazy.
Love
It is crazy.
Scott?
Yeah, I'm saying it seems funny because
May's busy, and you're also trying to end a year and start anew, and, yeah. So now that it's done, you can just kind of focus on the next, which is good. Other than my report, which wasn't a lot, I apologize, I had a hard time thinking about. But yeah, one thing, we know fifth graders had a little celebration of farewell. It wasn't much. They had me popping popcorn and they peach yogurt. So I mean, it was just a little, so long, have a good time. But they came over here and toured around and did that transition time, which is fun. So yeah, we're ready to rock and roll here. There's some projects coming up in the summer at the school.
They didn't have to get bussed over this
Right,
year,
they could
which
just
is
walk here, yeah.
Science game started.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I was impressed with the cake in the face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, would you like to
That
talk
was
about the pie?
This is my cream pie.
Was that pie?
That's all I wanted.
The only feedback I got from the kids, being like, man, if I would've gotten chosen, I really would've given it to him.
Yeah.
Some of those kids just kinda.
Yeah.
You know what? I will tell you, a fifth grader said, had I picked his name, he would have knocked me out of my chair. That was
Probably why his name wasn't chosen.
Strategically.
I
Well,
was
thanks for
strategic, I'll say
taking
it.
one for the team.
It was
You were
strategic.
plotting.
Yeah, it was fun. Good end of the year.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Dale, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Busy summer. My board report, I think that's most teachers we've had, sign up or have, specific plans for the summer, for our July through August. And we've been doing that a number of years. Numbers actually increased. I think we're at 56 teachers now.
Wow. Great.
One of the things I didn't put on this list, this week we have teachers in the building to do curriculum week, our scheduled curriculum week for science, and doing some math work as well. Some of the highlights, and there's other teachers that aren't on this list, are teachers, they do a lot in the summer. Time is always just precious, and summer is one of those times they're willing to come in and get the work done that needs to get done, so we're set up for the fall. But on the bottom, some of those highlights and outside workshops and conferences where we're sending different groups. See the dual credit there, Chris Hopper, approved for 2 credit courses, so that's a highlight for us. Pushing to do more of that. Currently having 8 staff members going to the PLC Summer Institute, that's in July as well, and we have 2 different groups going to a couple of CSER conferences. One is focused on reading, and the other one is early technical education. So I don't know if we've sent you that in the past, but myself, Kim Hauser, and Chris Hopper have been workshops as well. So a lot happening. So some of you real quick.
That's exciting.
Any questions for me?
That's fantastic to see all those things. I really appreciate you working into that. I know it's recent as well, but I saw from WASB that there's a bill going through the state right now, and I know it's recent, so I'm looking forward in a few weeks to know what you know. But do you have any idea of how much that would maybe mess things up here yet?
It'll be interesting how, because it'll get scaled back a bit.
Okay.
But we're actually in a pretty good position. The conference that I mentioned, the reading conference, that's related to the science of reading, so a lot of that bill focuses on that piece and how we're going to incorporate that. That's actually more than likely going to be a big chunk of our SIP for the upcoming school year at the elementary level. So we've lined ourselves up pretty well to fit in with that. Biggest debate on that proposed legislation is the 3rd grade reading requirement and potential retention at that level, so we'll see how that shakes out. DPI is opposed to that, but I think we've all read through the proposed bill, at least the majority of it, so I don't see where that's going to hit us.
Significant news.
Correct.
Okay.
We're in a pretty good position, and our achievement scores help us.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks for being so on top of it.
Thanks for that question.
Yeah.
He's Mr. Legislature.
I was watching
You don't miss anything. All right, well, thank you. All All right, moving on to our district business, 7.1 curriculum standards and goals, and that'll shift right into our presentation tonight.
Well, great, well, thanks. I'm gonna just kind of lead us off with this. We want to do a follow-up with our shared leadership team. This was our new leadership group. We replaced our district leadership team that we'd had for a number of years. So the shared leadership team format, really replacing the district leadership team, which was more of the DLT, was more of a group. We did meet monthly. We did a lot of information passing back and forth, updates with the elementary schools and what was happening at the middle school, high school, what was happening at the district level. So we had some great discussions, but the focus wasn't on staff learning, student learning as much. So we established the shared leadership team. So we wanted to do just a little follow-up. Focus for us was on the professional learning community, and you can see definition there. And I know the board has heard a lot about that. So we really wanted to use our shared leadership team as a vehicle to strengthen our PLCs across the board. So you go ahead, Bev. So why PLC? And you've seen these 4 questions many times over the years. Our SLT met monthly, but we also have our small group PLCs, our grade level teams, department teams here at the middle high school, called PLC teams, I think, just it was a diverse group based on the strategy that they were implementing into their classrooms. And those groups really base their weekly discussions on the 4 questions. Next slide just says, why SLT? Well, we wanted to go to this model. Really, if you look at successful PLC districts, they have a guiding coalition or a group. You go ahead and click that on. This is just an excerpt from one of the many books that we've used to help guide us in our PLC process or our PLC journey. And we knew, I'll say 2 years ago, one of the missing components that we had in our district was a guiding coalition. And so we identified that as a place that we wanted to get better and an area to improve. And the SLT has really done that for us. And you can see there's some highlights there, but if you look at, this is just an excerpt from the book. And I would encourage the board just to kind of read through these 2 pages. But really the guiding coalition is a group of people that are going to model and be leaders across the district, making sure that we're pursuing the same goals and the same strategies in the classroom. We click back, Bev. We started with the team expectations, and we referred to this throughout the school year. And I'll let you just scroll up. I'm not going to read through all of this. But we love that first line, serve as lead learners in support of student and staff learning. That's what it's all about. All our meetings were about that. How can we get better as teachers, principals, and ultimately it helps our students achieve at a higher level. Scroll down a little bit, just the time commitment, compensation, and so part of the reason we wanted to follow up with you as a board is just your support for this group when we proposed this a year ago. And you can see a number of meetings. It'll start again this summer. We have our SIP date scheduled for August 21st, but both buildings will meet prior to that. They'll get together in their building level groups prior to our district SIP on the 21st, and we'll have some tentative plans in place before we even get together. And we'll have a similar schedule this coming school year with our monthly meetings as a district, but then they have meetings within their buildings during the month as well. But that team description has really served us well as we come back to it, just as a focus for what we want to do as a group. Next slide, just recognize our team members. You can see the list of names there. Some powerful people there for our district have made a difference in a lot of lives of kids not only this past school year, but for many years. So essentially, the core group will be back again next school year. We have a few changes that we'll add that we think can help us. Obviously, with some of the folks that are leaving, some big shoes to fill as well. Just our vision. Key line in there is the growth of self-efficacy. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. We dedicated a couple of, 2 or 3 meetings where we just talked about teacher efficacy, which essentially is trusting one's own capabilities to make a difference in student learning. So as a teacher, and our ultimate goal is to reach where we have, collective teacher efficacy across the district, which essentially, the definition of that is just the perception of all of our teachers in a school that the efforts of a faculty as a whole will have a positive effect on students. And more each year, you see where we're at with our achievement and our growth. We're more and more on the same page as to what we're trying to do, what we want our kids to be able to do and learn. And we know from John Hattie's research that collective teacher efficacy is at the top of the list of the most important factor that improves student achievement. If we have that confidence and we trust we can make a difference individually, we know as a whole, together, we can have a big impact. And so that's a big emphasis of what we as a group, shared leadership team, are trying to do. I'll turn it over to the principals. They can talk a little bit about their specific plans. So Scott, you're up first. I'll let you just talk a little bit.
Cool. So, I'm going to take you back to last year before I start. So at the end of last year, when I was still at Black Earth, we kind of looked at a very specific set of practices. And one went after we went through the year and kind of gave our staff the opportunity to self-assess which area they were lowest in. It was the idea of when you're instructing using the graduate release method. So therefore, we just assumed we could take everybody and just kind of make that all happen at all grade levels. So that was what we started with this year. And again, the idea of this is when you're teaching, you start with everybody. You model it, you explain it, you kind of break it down, maybe do smaller groups, and then even further, some independent work or even just small collaborative work is the idea of that. So we, got some information from our teachers about where they felt they were at with that personally when they're planning a lesson or even instructing. And then we kind of went from there, talked about it very briefly. Didn't do as much as I wanted to, but what the group kind of realized is that it perhaps wasn't as big of a need as we once thought and when we started, which is a good problem to have. So we did go through the year, we did some fidelity checks, some peer observations, self-assessments, those things of the lessons, just to make sure that this was still kind of one of those elements we're still doing, because it is very high impact if you're doing it, as it's intended. So Ben, if you could move to the next one for me. So this, as an example, was just one piece we looked at. So of those 4 components of that method, this is one that was just kind of one of those 4. So when teachers were observed by a colleague or videotaped the lesson and kind of gave themselves a self-assessment, we noted that these elements were happening, as you can see, a certain percentage of the time it was happening. The other kind of interesting part is that if a teacher went in and it was near the end of the lesson, they weren't necessarily seeing the beginning of it, so they weren't catching those other pieces that are critical, but the underlying assumption was that it was happening, we just missed that. Or they left before they were working independently or in a small group. So some of the information was a little bit skewed, but we had to start somewhere, and it was a good place to start. But then again, at the end of the year, we kind of went, well, we're fairly confident everyone's doing this anyhow. So again, setting our sights, as Dale talked about earlier, on more of the science of reading and how we can really make sure that we're hitting all of those pieces of that is really where we're gonna focus next year. With that, so I'm gonna let Liz take over here.
So, middle school, high school continues to push the volume of reading, so kids reading more and kids reading more frequently. Okay, so volume and frequency. So our theory was that if we make sure that we have volume and it's happening frequently, if we're explicitly teaching a teacher's preferred reading strategy, taking students through the so what stage, and the so what stage is the analytical thinking. So can they read what's in front of them? Can they make sense of what is in front of them? But then can they think about it, reason about it, evaluate it? Okay. They will increase their achievement in reading, and then also their content knowledge in the discipline. And actually research coming out this spring has been talking about the content knowledge and the background knowledge in the disciplines is so key to students achieving in reading. And it's always been that way more with elementary focus with reading. Like the more kids have background knowledge when they read, the easier it is for them to acquire new language, new words. Okay? It's coming through now in adolescent literacy also, that the more background knowledge kids have coming into the different disciplines, the more likelihood they will see an increase in their reading achievement. So we continue to focus on how do we increase how much they're reading, make sure they're reading challenging materials, and then helping them think about it. So what we did is we formed PLC groups based around our 5 strategies that we've been using. And we did a series of cold reads, fall, winter, spring, to formatively assess if our students were getting better. And so those tests were administered grades 6 through 11. So we used the New York State end of year test for the middle school, grades 6 through 8, and then the New York Regents test for grades 9 through 11. The New York Regents test is an optional test given to students in the state of New York. There's different levels of diplomas in the state of New York, and if you want a Regents diploma, you have to sit for the Regents test in the academic core. So what we did is we pulled old released Regents tests and took out the nonfiction passages because we wanted kids to be reading nonfiction and not have to have any drawbacks on, well, I don't teach fiction in science, so they need to be reading nonfiction. So we just took that argument away. We just, okay, everyone's going to test on nonfiction. So the fall data is our benchmark. And the 6th, 7th, and 8th were out of 6 questions. And then 9, 10, and 11 were out of 10 questions. So they read this passage, answered questions that were both comprehension, inference questions, but then also so what questions, those thinking questions. And that's where they scored in the fall. And then we applied our treatment, which was explicit strategy instruction, volume and practice. And then you see the winter scores coming in. Interesting thing with the winter scores in grade 11, they peaked right before the ACT. Yay! Perfect! If you're gonna peak then, please. So that was excellent, and then we gave a spring score. The other thing that we started to track this year was historically underrepresented students. So in our district, our historically underrepresented students are students with disabilities and students of low socioeconomic status. And what you could see is that we had gains across the board, some grade levels greater than others. I will draw your attention, obviously, to 6th grade, who won the race with a 2.538 average gain for students in those historically underrepresented groups. So huge, huge work. Lots of lifting, practice, great response. And then also with grade 11. And they dropped in the spring, so I just took their winter score because, why would you punish them for that? But We saw gains across the board. Not as great necessarily in ninth grade, but we're moving. So as we look at this, we are now starting to think, okay, we need to continue volume frequency, but then also how do we teach kids to think? Not only about what they're reading, but then tying in, okay, what background knowledge do you have? And what are you learning in class from your class activities, notes, those kinds of things, so that we pull it all together. So our students struggle to see relationships necessarily between this piece of information, this piece of information, and this piece of information. So what can we do to help them pull it together? So that's where we're looking at next year.
And so when you focus on that, you're expecting the scores to be
Scores
higher?
will continue to
Because
go
you focus
up.
on the analytical in the questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because they're getting better at like just straightforward comprehension, but when the work becomes more sophisticated, they sometimes struggle with that sophistication. And that's not unusual. Like, I always try to remind people, like, as adults, we're sophisticated readers. We know how to read, we know how to process information and make sense of it for ourselves and interpret what it means. That's a whole new skill set for students in 6th through 12th. So you hope by the end of 12th grade, they're ready to be released into the wild, as I like to say, as adults, and to do this independently on their own. So to me, that 11th grade score is indicating that our students are peaking. They're getting to where they need to be ready to leave us in a year.
Yeah. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
For the same test, is it the same questions across the grades, or are they different?
They query the same standards, so they read a different passage on each test, but each test queries the same standards. So you can compare from test to test if kids are getting better on specific standards and strands.
But I mean, so like 6, 7, and 8 took the EOY test,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And those were different questions for each grade? Or
Yes, they were different passages. Each grade got a different passage with different questions.
Okay.
So they had 3 distinct passages at each grade level, fall, winter, spring. But they query the same.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're making progress, and it does my heart good to see that our historically underrepresented students are coming up.
I think Jordan shared in the board packets our end of the year presentation to staff. So the full list of all the data is there. If you haven't clicked through that, some impressive stuff that our buildings did throughout the school year. Of course, come fall, we started all over again with our new benchmarks where we're at, and hopefully we end up in June of next year having similar conversations about the achievement. So I'll finish this out here, just talking a little more about the SLT specifically. Each of our SLT meetings, we started with our meeting norms, and you can see there, just kept it very straightforward, positive approach, be present, and be a reflective learner. And so we reviewed those at the start of each meeting, and I think we did a pretty good job. We always came back to them at the end of each meeting. Of course, that clock was always ticking because we got a lot done in our hour time frame, but we reviewed those norms as well, start and at the end of each meeting. Thought it'd be nice just to share, here's our month of May, our district level, what's our agenda look like. You see our norms at the top. We always put some resources there, but we just grabbed last month's meeting, and it was a follow-up from our April meeting. And we read an article, we watched a video. Specifically, we talked about with staff and any organization, is it a matter of will or is it a matter of skill? So we're trying to implement certain instructional strategies in our classroom. Is it because we don't want to, or because we don't know how to? And use that as a source of discussion for our group. It was wonderful. And you can see some of the results there. I just talked, I may be looking ahead of myself, but I think I am. Oh, you can see feedback from our last meeting. The two groups said it was a mix of the two. We had 4 groups that we split into smaller groups within the meeting, so you can see 2 groups said it's kind of a combination of will and skill, and we had 2 groups that said it's more of an issue of will. Sometimes, we, as educators, we get stuck in our ways with how we do certain things, and so part of this group's mission is to push out and be leaders amongst the staff, so we're all on the same page and we're emphasizing those best practices in our classrooms. And the whole idea of the balance between will and skill, the goal of this meeting was to help build some capacity within the teachers in that group. How do we take that back within our small groups and have these tough conversations within those, so we get to the places that we want to be. It was a great topic for a couple of meetings that we had there.
I'll just say, I kind of love though that there was the awareness to recognize that. I mean, that's like a one huge step, being like, wow, I maybe fit into that category, where I need a little bit more drive, and will, it's not there. Or at least it's just getting people to think about it and recognize it and ponder and, gets them in a good place.
Time of year sometimes comes into play as well, depending on who is stuck with. But that puts for all of us in leadership positions to recognize that and to make sure that we're approaching things in a positive way to keep us rolling on the train. So our kids peak at the ACT.
Yeah.
Our kids peak when they need to peak, and they're ready for that next step or that next grade level. I'll finish it out with just some feedback I shared in the slides here. We kicked out a feedback survey to the SLT group, and you can see the question there. We based our feedback on the SLT expectations that you saw earlier there. So you can see some of the quotes, just what we want to be. The second quote there, and I think it's the second sentence, I like that we ask the hard questions and work together as a group to push ourselves as educators and leaders in the building. I also think that those conversations we were having as SLT trickle down to our individual PLC groups ultimately benefits the school as a whole. Number of comments on the survey, very similar to this. Focal points for next year, you can see here, here's a question we asked: what aspect of your team's work do you believe needs more attention? I grabbed one of the, kind of one of the themes, but it's a struggle for our staff. Come back to their colleagues, their peers, some they've been working with for years, have built those relationships, and maybe think about doing something maybe a different way or a different approach. So those are hard conversations, and that's some work as a group we'll focus on next year and try to build that capacity within our shared leadership team. Some of the themes, and I just put some general terms down there, those are my words there, just some of that needs more attention, specific expectations for our individual PLC teams. We're not always consistent across the board for departments and grade levels. Some teams function better than others, so we can tighten that a bit. Communication out to all staff, what we're working on as an SLT group. That was a common comment back. We can do a better job just, even talking about will and skill, will versus skill, to the whole group. We as leaders can maybe facilitate a means to do that. Time, that's always one of those issues. They requested more opportunities for peer observations and feedback from each other and to others. It's always tough, particularly it's become tougher for us because of the sub shortage, and teachers teachers don't like being out of the classroom. And the efficacy work came up a number of times in the comments. They want to continue that work and just creating that collective goal of confidence that can make this happen. And then a few comments about outside conferences and workshops. They want to get out and do more, make sure that they're staying current. And so we, starting this summer, we're making an effort to do more of that as well, to provide those opportunities for staff. Thank you as a board for supporting the team. We'll be better year 2, but it's made a big impact. Just how we do business, and I think it was a really good decision to go this route. So we appreciate your support there. Any questions for us as a group?
Looks like a lot came out of it, starting on here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're getting like the exact kind of responses that you would want out of the first year, you know, especially from teachers saying what they want, what they think can get better, so great job.
Yeah, thank you for all of that, great information. Keep the ball rolling. All right, any other questions? All right, we'll be moving on then to our other focal point, one of the many focal points of tonight. Under 7.2 employee relations, you'll note the update and changes posted to the handbook and employee manual, just there for a draft version. Are there any additional comments or feedbacks that we can take to Jordan?
I have 3 things. One, I found a typo, 9.04-3.
We don't bring those up.
Oh, sorry. By typo, I meant I must have read it wrong because my eyes missed the letter.
And this was an area that was changed?
I don't know.
Oh, see, so it could have been.
It was probably
Okay.
someone else. I just noticed.
Such a rookie mistake.
I'm the new guy.
You
though,
can
so
email
sorry.
that.
But I had a question about
Which one is it? Is it under handbook or the employee?
handbook changes for coaches. And it was just a general question for recognizing assistant coach time going forward, and is that just from now on, so anytime assistant coaches elevate, or is it retroactive?
I believe it's from this point.
Point
From
on.
now on.
Okay.
From approval, which will be on our next meeting agenda,
Sounds good.
going into effect July 1.
Great. And then, how hours are recorded for coaches, since that's a different process? When they are in the off-season, because it was specified, I was just curious. Time sheet? Okay.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Could you set up at the error was on?
I will, it's a secret little message.
All right, so yes, that was
Good job.
just draft version, that will come back for approval at our next meeting. And 7.3, budget and finance. Also,
Barb, I think the position description, number 2 there, wasn't that the conditioning training position that you guys were gonna?
Oh, yeah, it's up there.
in the handbook.
No, it's
Executive
number just
content.
under executive, I think Jordan had the draft to the, that new position that you guys were talking about.
Oh, yes.
I think you have to copy that.
Baby.
There you go.
Now you can. Yep, now just do Control C. And then go here. Open.
Thanks, Bev.
Yeah.
It's in the same font. and
Yeah,
size.
I know.
And was much change from the original?
I don't think,
I didn't think,
unless
yeah,
you guys
yeah,
have feedback,
Okay.
I'm not aware of changes.
yeah. So this would be a second look at it.
I had a couple things,
Go.
and I could save them for when Kendra's here next time,
That's
because
right.
I'm sure she's got answers, but, one was about like a nutrition aspect to the role, because, you know, when you're doing all this type of athletic and you're really trying to build muscle or stuff like that, you also have to have like a nutrition aspect to it, so I didn't know if we wanted to include that in the position description. so that if we're hiring someone, we can also say this is crucial. So that was my first point.
I think that's great, and I
Yeah,
think,
nutrition is
I
a
think
big
you almost
part
have
of
to
it.
put like if applicable, because I think to our point,
Yeah.
you really aren't just gonna hire anybody if they
Yeah.
don't fit the needs for the role. So if it's somebody that has knowledge, that's definitely a bonus that we
Yeah.
would tap into. But whether you're gonna get a nutritionist and you know, it has to be a perfect fit when I'm hiring, but I definitely think that's something to put on there. If, you know, experience in this,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
definitely, I think that's a
Because
good
it
point.
definitely corresponds with any type of weight training or conditioning, is if you aren't fueling your body the way you should, then it's not gonna be effective, no
Mhm.
matter how much you work out. And it's actually gonna do the opposite, you're gonna end up hurting yourself, so that's a very good point to try to kind of work something in there to where, you know, and that could definitely be a question too, you know, and throughout the hiring process is, you know, what is your knowledge about, you know, this type of training and nutrition?
And I think it was, the purpose is to be something across the board in all athletics, which is
Yeah.
really, that's a theme
Yeah.
that is,
Yeah.
again, pertinent for all of our athletes, so.
Yeah,
Good idea. That was only one.
I know, I had a couple, I was thinking about this one for a while, so thinking about, you know, coaches I've had in the past, they can be stubborn folks, and we want this role to be someone who can really get folks on board with a unified system. So I'd just be interested to know what the plan is, not that it needs to be written into it, but to make sure that this person does have the ability to really get folks on board, and to kind of say, your athletic program as a basketball coach, as a volleyball coach, track coach, whichever season you're in, needs to be thinking of strength and conditioning as a part of it. Because they're being hired as a coach on the level with other folks, but you know, they're gonna be involved at a level that other coaches aren't with the territory of other folks, you know, and so I just wanna make sure they are supported in that way.
What in terms of like verbiage are you looking to add?
I would
Like, is
refer
there
to
any
experts,
oh.
but I just,
I didn't
you
know if there
know,
was something
Yeah.
specific.
I don't know if there was, but just because, you know, folks, you know, when you're the head coach and you've got your plan, you've got your practice time, and then you have somebody on the outside come in and say, one of your hours a week should be in the gym, you know, that might not go over well all the time,
I
but,
think it fits in, and Kendra probably could speak more to this, because I know she's doing a lot of work with all of the coaches.
Right, I know.
Building the Vanguard vision,
I
and
was
so I think it
just gonna
feels,
say,
it's a perfect addition to that, and just saying, these are our expectations. This is part of what we do here at Heights, to better our student
they've already
athletes.
put together a pretty rigorous, like, schedule for lifting. So like it's, girls only, and then it's co-ed, and then it's boys only. So they've already started to utilize the weight room a lot more, you know, to make sure that, you know, the athletes know, you know, that it's open, so that, you know, the girls aren't weightlifting with the boys, you know, and kind of make them feel uncomfortable. So that was a big thing in hiring with the basketball coach. There was a lot of talk about, you know, over the summer, they're going to be really focusing on working together as a team and not every individual sport. They kind of want to have, you know, standards and ways that each team is going to function on a similar level. You know, just because you do want the kids to get into the weight room, and then, you know, bringing this, you know, this strength coach in, you want to make sure that every program gets their piece of it, right?
Yeah.
You don't want, you know, so I think Kendra has a lot of good ideas about, you know, they're gonna be doing a lot of brainstorming this summer, so.
yeah, that sounds great.
So yeah, so no, that's a good.
And that sounds like an effective way to do it too, you know, as long as you know, the discussions, the monthly discussions, frame it as like, rely on this person and make sure you have a plan that can work. So, is 2,500 enough? I don't know again, but just it seems like a really more long-term position than some other coaches, even though we have expectations for coaches year-round, no matter what program. This one feels very in-depth, so I was just kind of bringing it up.
Do you know if that stipend was seasonal for each season, or that was because I thought at one
I
point.
think it's per
Per
season.
season.
I think
That's
it's
the
per,
price.
yeah, I think it's per
Okay.
season.
Because we were gonna start by posting it because maybe somebody's availability in the summer is different than the
Right,
fall.
yeah.
So conceptually, if they're saying, hey, I'm
I'm
all
all
year,
year,
then
it's-
it would be by quarter season, 2,500.
No, so it's
Up.
2,500, 2,500, 2,500, not
Yes.
2,500.
Correct,
Yes.
right,
Thank
correct.
you. Now that makes sense.
Yes, that makes a
Okay.
little bit more sense.
All right, so that will be brought back again. So if you think of anything else.
I've had a lot of questions answered.
Got it,
Sorry.
no, anytime. Got a few more weeks yet. All right, and same with 7.3. Attached is the updated fees, reference guide for first posting, any initial discussion?
I'm
Any of those?
glad that they're keeping it capped at 170 though, because as a parent with multiple sports, with multiple children, it's very nice. Yeah, I think, I was wondering when the fees were gonna be raised though, because it had been the same for quite a while.
Inflation.
Yeah, it makes total sense, makes total sense.
Alright, so this fee list will also come back at a future meeting for approval. Moving on to 7.4, alright. This discussion will be about our ongoing planning about our solar energy project. And I don't wanna say we hit a wall with it, but Burke was out here, I met up with Jordan and Bill, when the DNR came to do their wetland study. And so I'd be happy to go out there after and walk back there, because I think it really helps when you're actually there seeing the footprint. But the space that we initially had hoped for, off the Wolf Run Trail back in the, I'm gonna say marshy area, but by then it was brush covered and unusable for really anything, is now considered all wetland. And so, of course, when it's labeled as a wetland, there's a 75-foot easement. And we're at the point now where there's a significant elevation change between the marsh wetland area, and then there's a full set of trees and probably a 10 to 20 foot elevation gain from our grassy area where it extends up to the playground. So the thought is, well, now if there's a 75 foot kind of easement or variance off of that, then you can only start the solar panel in from there, which when you're standing there looking at it, it's a considerable chunk of our green space. And so the next path would then be applying for a variance, saying, hey, can you cut that to 35 feet? If we, start right at the elevation gain, that helps us out with 30 to 50 feet of space, but it's still pretty crunched. And so it's totally different than our initial view of keeping it tucked back in that marshy land behind those set of trees, nobody sees it, doesn't interfere with anything, to now saying, well, now we're moving into the green space. The cross-country runners will need a 6 to 8 foot kind of gap in there between the panels and the trees, because that's part of their route. And our legal counsel was kind of all over the place as far as the odds of getting a variance approved, because one of the key sticking points is whether essentially we caused the space to be limited. And so it's kind of like, well, you put the track there, you put your property, exists in the realm of that. So you self-harmed yourself because you're in a location in proximity to the track and whatnot. So long story short, it's kind of like if we're looking to even apply for the variance, it could be 4 months.
Yeah.
Just by the time we apply for it, they have to meet 30 days after the hearing, yada, 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 for it to, at the end of the day, not be approved. The conversations with Burke, if we do move to the roof mount, because of the new roof on the elementary, that time frame as far as the 20 to 25 year lifespan for either is still pretty doable and good. It won't cost us any more money. Usually that's a little more affordable and cheap doing the roof mount. So that's kind of where we...
My first question, because I have dealt with Dane County zoning a lot, my first question is that I know that we kind of had some discussion going back and forth about what type of piles that they're going to be using. Because in my experience with Dane County, as long as you show them that whatever you're using is going to withstand being held up to a wetland, they're usually fine with it. So my personal opinion, yes, it does impede in the green space, but my personal opinion is I would rather pay the $300 to see if we can get the variance through before we put anything on the roof. Because I'm very, very leery about doing any roof mount of that substantial size. I mean, if we were talking about 3 or 4 panels, hey, rock on. But if we're talking about something that's going on a roof and hey, guess what, we need to do maintenance. Well, now we have to pull all those off. Now we have to put them all back on. So it's, I mean, yeah, like I said, it does stink that it would kind of impede in the green space, but
I think why it's important to get out there is you don't realize how it's taking up the last green space we have. And so it's a 20, 25-year investment of what if we
Right.
want to build a baseball field again, or put up a shed, or, I mean, so you're talking about ripping out panels either way if you have to utilize space for, so I completely understand what you're saying, but I think we should go out and look, and so conceptually when it's 1,000 panels. It's not a couple rows chunked in it, it's,
Right.
so when you get out there looking at, well, this is what the landscape's gonna look like, 100 feet away, the kids are playing soccer, for me to, the panels start up there, I mean, it changes the landscape.
And there's no way that they can configure them in any other shape?
Listed, you have the 3 and the 4 row, option, but again, we're so limited with green space that either way you have it, it's jumbled, taking up the entire,
Yeah.
proximity of the green space, whether you do a diamond, a square, lines.
And so this is a really stupid question, but what are we utilizing the green space for other than cross-country? I'm just curious.
Nothing, the
Okay.
kids,
Yeah.
Scott they play soccer in some, closer to the playground, obviously, so
Yeah.
nobody goes way back by the wetland area anyway.
They should be, right?
Dry summers, we use that for football practice.
Oh, football, okay.
Practice field gets so rough,
Good to know.
so.
Well, that and they don't like everybody honking at them as they drive.
Well, but I know, but we had some years
I haven't
Yeah.
heard that, okay.
that we will use.
I guess
that.
I should know that, but I'm never there for
Okay, thank
practice,
you.
so.
Because it is kind of the last chunk of just open,
Yeah.
usable,
Right.
Well, I think we gotta go out and see it, because I'm a visual, I need to
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
get out there and see it.
Yeah, exactly, where it would start, where it would end, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents with Dane County zoning, is I've gotten several variances approved with Dane County zoning, so that's, of course, it's not anything on this scale, but that's just my 2 cents on the whole.
anyone else have any questions?
I have the same concerns of
Yep.
putting it on the roof. I think, I saw a
Well,
lot of people
yeah.
shaking their heads,
Yeah.
It's just,
If-
it's such an expense.
And then if something goes wrong with the school, then there's something wrong with the investment you made into the panels, and that just becomes.
Well, and that prolongs our return on investment
Right.
by,
So every time
I don't
you
know,
take
I don't know what the cost would be, but yeah.
That's what we
Would you feel more comfortable if we have Burke give us a synopsis?
I would like to know
of-
what the cost would be
Yes.
to do if, say we did have to do a roof repair.
Right.
What's the cost to basically take them off, let them do the repair and come put them back on?
And what kind of time frame are you looking at? How long is it gonna take them to take them down? How long it would have taken to put them back up?
And from what I understand, speaking your language, it's kind of like the laminate floor, where obviously you can take it chunk, you're not removing the
Yep.
entire section.
Yep.
So if there's a leak in one spot, it's a matter
Yeah, you're not gonna take the entire thing
Correct,
down,
right,
yes.
right. And there are pieces to disassemble.
Unless
it.
you're doing that whole section of roof, which will have to be done at some point, but.
I think they just really have to really convince us, because I just think that roofs are like the boogeyman of schools. And then to tell us that we're gonna put on a huge investment that's supposed to save us money.
We're gonna put thousands of holes in the roof.
That just is like something that is haunting school districts all the time, it has to be repaired. And then I think just historically for us to say we need to move to a one campus district because the roofs are gonna be so expensive to fix in the schools, to then put solar panels here. If it makes sense financially, it does, but I think we just have to have a really strong reasoning behind it if we do move forward.
Well, I can reach out and see if he'd like to even zoom in and,
Yep.
available at our next meeting.
They're gonna put them there. That's where the new pad is for the shot with discus. So they couldn't
That would
put
have
it
to be
there
moved.
anyways.
Well, that
Which
would-
they, and they just put that in.
Oh, I know, yeah.
And where the heck do you move that to?
That's what I wanna get out there and see.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, where do you move shot with
Visualize, I
discus?
can't see it
It's something
here.
that he could come and we actually walk out with him.
Well, I can take it, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, because it's,
Yeah.
it's literally 3 rows.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's nothing really that he can explain.
Okay.
It was essentially the woman doing the wetland study, and we stood there and looked and did our footsteps, so 75 feet in its entirety, and so.
I got a laser
There's not a
line
lot
in the
to
truck,
it.
I think we can measure it.
Perfect.
And the baseball, I mean, the lines are still there where the field used to be, so it's pretty evident where it would be. But let's table that. I'll follow up with Jordan and see if we can get Burke in on their next meeting. I see he wrote, he's still wanting to hear about the zoning, but I think I was on an email about that, so I don't think anything else is being pursued at this time. So I'll follow up with him, and maybe he'll have an update next meeting as well. All right, then, anything else for now? Okay. No more focal points in our those. All right, district business. 8.1, do I have a motion to approve 2 open enrollments that were originally denied for the 23-24 year?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I just have a question, about the one, this would be the second one, the 12th grader. What was the reasoning, I can't remember what the reasoning was for denial?
It was truancy.
Attendance, okay. I thought that maybe that was the one, but I wasn't sure.
Anything else? Is there a motion on this one?
There was, yeah,
Yeah,
one second,
okay.
I think.
All right, you're done.
You
Cindy
first.
first.
And then you were,
I did.
and Cindy was
You
second.
did second, and that was first.
I was first.
You were first.
All right, Mary Beth?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Dylan?
Yes.
Yes.
Angie? Yes as well. All right, do I have a motion to combine 9.2 to 9.11?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you to everybody for service on there. A lot of, I know. All right, any discussion? You're done. Cindy?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Dylan?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Do I have a motion to combine 10.1 and 10.2?
So moved.
Second.
Included would be the approval of the WIA membership for the 23-24 school year, and as well as a WIA co-op for girls lacrosse, which is really exciting.
Super exciting.
Co-oping with DeForest, Sauk, Prairie, and Lodi. Another opportunity for student athletes. All right, any other discussion? Hearing done. Cindy?
Yes.
Mary Beth? Mike?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Dylan?
Yes.
Angie? Yes. I vote yes as well. Future meeting dates, just make note of Monday, July 17th is on the schedule now as far as our board workshop, starting at 5 p.m. Details and agenda to follow. Is that still good with everybody?
What day was that? That was
July
17th.
17th.
Yep. And we're gonna start at 5 again, right?
Yep. So,
Make sure it was.
yeah, Craig. Are you getting the lake that Monday night? or-
What night? I'm looking at your executive session right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. July 17th, Monday at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Oh, you had all those dates on there.
I put all the 20, yeah, I love that. For advanced scheduling. I love it. Good deal.
Thank you.
Love it. Alrighty, we will adjourn to executive session pursuant pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
I'll make a motion. No, it's roll call.
Just a
Roll
roll
call.
call.
I was like, what are you doing over there?
Roll call clerk.
All right, Cindy Byteam.
Here.
Mary Beth Shaw. Here. Barb Stotts.
Yep.
Mike Wagner.
Yep.
Matt Crowe.
Here.
Dylan Hollenstein.
Yep.
And I'm here too.